Welcome to the 2021 Minneapolis Mayoral Candidate Forum. I'm Laura Helmer, President of the League of Women Voters of Minnesota and your moderator for this evening. This November, Minneapolis residents will choose between 17 candidates for mayor. All of the candidates were invited to tonight's forum, and 12 candidates have agreed to participate this evening. We're delighted that so many of you could join us. This forum is co-sponsored by A New 612, Lead Minnesota, Fair Vote Minnesota, and the League of Women Voters Minneapolis. Also sponsoring tonight is our gracious host and broadcasting partner, MCN6. The League of Women Voters encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League is proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government, but always working on vital issues of concern to members and the public. I'd like to take a moment to remind you that Minneapolis has ranked choice voting elections. You will have the power to rank your first, second, and third choice candidate on the ballot this fall. If your first choice is eliminated in the instant runoff, your second choice will count. If your second choice is eliminated, your third choice will count. In the end, the winning candidate will be the one who has a majority of continuing ballots. As you listen to the candidates tonight, consider not just your first choice, but also your second and third. Turning now to the format for tonight. We will begin with a 30-second candidate intro. Then we'll move into a quick yes or no answer round about the charter amendments that will appear on the ballot. From there, we'll move to a 1-minute question and answer session, followed by a 1-minute closing from each of you. Due to the large number of candidates here, we are going to keep things moving. I ask that you please heed the 15-second timing warning given by our volunteers tonight. Let's begin with a 30-second introduction from each of you. We'll start with you, candidate Benjigurtis, and we'll work our way down the line. So we'll go down this line, and then we'll continue over here. Please be sure to state your name and why you're running for the office of mayor. Please begin, candidate Benjigurtis.
Thank you, everyone. And I wanted to say one of the reasons I'm running is because of ranked choice voting, because this allows me to be part of the political process. I had such a great interactions with the other candidates when I did this the first time 8 years ago. And so I'm doing it again because it was the best money I ever spent in the political process was paying the city of Minneapolis to run for mayor.
Candidate Winter.
Hi, I'm Mike Winter. I'm running with the Independence Alliance Party. I am bipartisan like the League of Women Voters, and thank you for having me here. I've spent the majority of my life here in Minneapolis. I've never tried to run for office before until now. I'm disgusted at what's happened to my city over the past year and a half, and as a regular person and as a Teamster, I would like to throw my hat into the ring and try to change things for the better.
Candidate Awed.
Thank you. Good evening, Minneapolis. Thank you for having us, League of Women Voters, LEAD. Thank you for hosting this event. As you probably heard from the two speakers before me, the city really is going through a lot. I'm raising my hand because we really need true leadership to bridge the differences and bring people together. We need to have someone that really is comfortable with the issues of the day, and that really means having tough and challenging conversations as it relates to race. And I believe the lived experiences that I have can really bring the city back to the right path and really grow in a way that's healthy and sustainable. So thank you very much.
Candidate Globus.
My name is Mark Globus. I ask you to do 3 things tonight. Stop, look, listen. Don't let fear drive your next vote for mayor. Instead, listen to the logic. I'm an attorney and business person. I'm the one candidate who built housing and manages businesses. I'm a bridge builder with plans and solutions to solve the problems that face Minneapolis. Together, we can create a new course for this city. It is time to move this city forward.
Candidate Fry.
Thank you to our sponsors for putting on this event tonight. My name is Jacob Fry, and I am the mayor of Minneapolis. And through 2 years of unprecedented progress and a period of unprecedented challenges, I've rose up to tell the truth. We've charted an honest and progressive path forward to the city, and we've led with values every step of the entire way. And so this city doesn't quit, and neither do I. I ask for your vote and your support.
Candidate Johnson.
Hello, I'm Paul Johnson, Northside resident and business owner. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the co-hosts tonight, as well as the Minneapolis community. We are running on a platform of diversifying our public safety methods, ending the housing crisis, stopping the school-to-prison pipeline, and having residential internet for all as a utility. We must fight together in all ways in order to join together in our communities and gather once again to become the Minneapolitans we can be.
Candidate Najad.
Hello, my name is Sheila Najad. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm running for mayor of Minneapolis because we need a champion for our city. I'm going to keep my mask on today because I have loved ones who are immunocompromised, and we know that we can keep each other safe in a lot of ways. So I was born in Fargo to 2 teachers, and they instilled in me a love of public service. That's why I was board president of my neighborhood association, got a master's degree from the Humphrey School, and have spent the past years working on the city budget. Thank you.
Candidate Perry.
Good evening. I'm Jarrell Perry, Mayor Perry for the people of Minneapolis. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you, Ms. Laura, for moderating tonight. And thank you to the people in the background. Without your humble service, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing out front. So thank you so much for your service. And even bigger, thank you to the residents of Minneapolis for tuning in tonight. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here tonight. God has blessed our city with a unique opportunity to do things that the world has never seen. I'm asking you to come together and walk with us on this journey to make our city the place where everyone can come to live, work, and play. Thank you.
Candidate Carney.
I'm Bob again, Carney Jr. Thanks to our sponsors, I'm the only Republican on this panel. Starting Wednesday, I'll be declaring a peaceable assembly zone for politically homeless people at the Hennepin County Government Center. That's the site of the 2011 Occupy movement. We are in big trouble as a city. I'm inviting everybody, including especially people who've been driven away from the Republican Party in recent decades. Watch my campaign site for details.
Candidate Connor.
Hi, my name is Clint Connor. 1 month ago, I stepped away from partnership at a downtown law firm to fully commit myself to the city because we need a change in leadership right away, and I believe I'm the person to do it. Since then, I've been hitting the streets and hearing your stories, and what you're telling me is that you want safe streets, stable, affordable, and livable housing for all, and a small business boom. If you want those things, vote for me, Clint Connor. Together as one, we'll get it done.
Candidate Atkins.
My name is Nate Atkins. You will find me on the ballot as Nate Honey Badger Atkins. I have been endorsed by both the Libertarian Party of Minnesota as well as the Legal Marijuana Now Party. I have lived in the state my entire life. I've lived in the city for 12 years. Focus of my campaign is offering the people of Minneapolis a choice and not an echo. We can have a balance between feeling safe from the cops as well as feeling safe on our streets.
Candidate Knuth.
Hi, I'm Kate Knuth, and I'm running for mayor because we're at a transformative moment in our city, and we can feel it in the conflict and the unsteadiness. And the people of Minneapolis are ready to meet this moment, and we need a real partner in the mayor's office to help us do that. I have the commitment and demonstrated leadership of having served in the state legislature, built and led a program at the university, and worked at City Hall to deliver on what is necessary. Even more than issues, I've heard people are hungry for competence in the mayor's office, and I'm ready to deliver that leadership competence.
All right, thank you all. Now we'll move into what we're calling our lightning round, the yes or no answer section about the charter amendments on the ballot. I'll read each charter amendment, and then I'd like you to respond, giving only a simple yes or no answer. We'll start with candidate Najad and move down the line. And after candidate Knuth, we'll pick up with candidate Johnson and move down the line. And I won't call your name on this one, so if you'll watch for your turn for your yes or no answer. All right, city question number 1 is on government structure. Shall the Minneapolis City Charter be amended to adopt a change in its form of government to an executive mayor legislative council structure to shift certain powers to the mayor, consolidating administrative authority over all operating departments under the mayor, and eliminating the executive committee? The question is, do you support this amendment? Candidate Najad.
No.
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 Yes.
I haven't taken a strong position.
Yes.
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 Definitely.
Yes.
No.
All right. City question number 2 affects the Department of Public Safety. Shall the Minneapolis City Charter be amended to remove the police department and replace it with a Department of Public Safety that employs a comprehensive public health approach to the delivery of functions by the Department of Public Safety, with those specific functions to be determined by the mayor and city council by ordinance, which will not be subject to exclusive mayoral power over its establishment, maintenance, and command, and which could include licensed peace officers, if necessary, to fulfill its responsibilities to public safety. This amendment would create a Department of Public Safety, combining public safety functions through a comprehensive public health approach to be determined by the mayor and council. The department would be led by a commissioner nominated by the mayor and appointed by the council. The police department and its chief would be removed from the city charter. The public safety department could include police officers, but the minimum funding requirement would be eliminated. The question is, do you support this amendment? Candidate Najad.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
No.
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 Yes.
Yes.
No.
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 Nope.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to city question number 3, authorizing city council to enact rent control ordinance. Shall the Minneapolis City Charter be amended to authorize the city council to regulate rents on private residential property in the city of Minneapolis? This amendment would authorize the city council to regulate rents on private residential property in the city of Minneapolis by ordinance, and provide that ordinance regulating rents on private residential property could be enacted in 2 different and independent ways. Either the city council may enact the ordinance, or the city council may refer the ordinance as a ballot question to be decided by the voters for approval at an election. The question is, do you support this amendment?
Yes.
We need home ownership, but until we get to that point, yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes on process, but not necessarily substance.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
No.
All right, thank you, candidates. Now we'll move into the question and answer portion. You've all been randomly selected for 5 questions. You'll have 1 minute to answer. Since you all will not get the same questions, you may use your closing remarks to address topics of your choice. Your closing will only be 1 minute, and it will wrap up the evening after this question and answer round. If at any time you need a question repeated, please ask. For question number 1, we'll begin with the following candidates in this order: Najad, Carney, Atkins, Winter, Fry, Connor. And I will remind you when it is your turn to answer. We'll begin with you, candidate Najad. What is the most important item on your mayoral agenda, and how will you address it?
Thank you. The most important item on my agenda is safety, and safety is my area of expertise. As mayor, I'm going to invest the most in our public safety systems, and it starts with our youth. I've been doing work around public safety at the city for years. I was part of the coalition that helped start the Office of Violence Prevention and mobile mental health response teams that hit the ground last month. As mayor, I will have a fully funded 311 and 911 system, as well as maintaining 888 public safety staff. But under my leadership, we're going to diversify the types of responses we have available. We're going to have more mental health responders, more domestic violence advocates, more gun violence prevention specialists. I'm running for mayor because we deserve safety and racial justice, and I hope I can earn your support.
Candidate Carney.
Hi, I had an article in Star Trib on July 21st calling out a democratic form of voter suppression. And it's very simple. We just don't have very many elections. We've got an election every 4 years, the year after the presidential election, low turnout. And I'm calling for annual elections. We need to have a 1-year warranty on anybody who's elected in Minneapolis. We need accountability. I believe that if we do this, it will change the way that politics works. It will not be dominated by money. It will give an opportunity for activists to be more engaged on a continuing basis to propose new ideas. And it would also give the voters a chance to remove somebody if they give them a shot at something and decide it's not working out. We need to have accountability. We need to have a 1-year warranty on anybody who runs for anything. I will resign if I'm elected after 1 year so that we can get Mr. Samuelson as mayor. I think he'd be the best choice going forward.
Candidate Atkins.
The focus of my campaign has been to bridge the gulf between those who wish to kind of defund the police and those who believe that we need a fully funded police force. I believe that we need very substantial, very real, and very concrete police reforms. The things I would focus on as mayor would be requiring all police carry professional liability insurance as a condition of employment. I'd also focus on decriminalizing drug use and possession. Currently, the system that we have is one that directs people more into prison and cages and not through rehabilitation and treatment options. That results in people not being able to get or maintain jobs. It results in them being denied housing abilities. Really, the war on drugs has been an absolute disaster, and we can lead by at least starting to decriminalize drug use and possession.
Candidate Winter.
My number one concern is reforming and refunding our Minneapolis Police Department. I do not want Minneapolis to go back to being called Murderapolis, City of Wakes. And we are fast approaching that again. It's not safe for kids to play in their own backyards in North Minneapolis and some of our poor areas. And I think it's just terrible. I would like to have 800 police officers with 88 mental health experts that are highly trained in de-escalation techniques. I would also like to remove the blue wall and hold officers accountable for their actions when they make mistakes in the field. But I believe that we are a safer city with a fully funded police department. Thank you.
Candidate Fry.
As mayor, you are required to handle a litany of different topics at the same time. And all the same, I think we have to acknowledge that safety and accountability has to be at the top of the ticket. We can have accountability and safety at the same time. These issues are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they are intrinsically linked. And I have been consistent about my approach. I believe in a both-end approach to public safety, deep structural change, a full-on culture shift, safety beyond policing because not every single 911 call requires response from an officer with a gun, and simultaneously, we need police officers. And right now, we have fewer officers per capita than just about any city in the entire country. We need a clear both-end approach. That is the honest path forward, and we need to be working alongside both our chief as well as our director of Office of Violence Prevention.
Candidate Connor.
Look, we all know the problems that our wonderful city is facing. As mayor, I will change the narrative immediately. Under the city charter, the mayor has complete power over establishing, maintaining, and commanding the police department. I will use that authority to, number one, keep the good police we do have and recruit good people who want to be a part of Minneapolis. Number two, I will aggressively investigate the problems within the police department and fix them. Number three, we need to start the healing process and get back to work. Regarding the ballot amendment number 2, regardless of how that turns out, I will have a plan. To the black and brown community, please know that I, for my lifetime, have been standing up to bullies and up for racial equity. We will create a police department that you can trust, that is worthy of your trust. Vote for me on November 2nd. Thank you.
Question 2 will be asked to the following candidates in this order. Candidate Globus, Awed, Benjigirtis, Perry, Knuth, and Johnson. And we'll begin with candidate Globus. What public safety problems do you view as most important, and what measures would you support to solve them?
Well, again, public safety is the number one issue we're facing in this city. Over the past year, our police department has been cut 25%, not by policy, but organically by retirement and PTSD. We need to bring the police department back up to full force again to address the issues in the city. With public safety, I think we need a unique approach to go towards mental health issues. If the police receive a call on mental health, we'll have a separate group that's going to go out and deal with those issues along with social workers and psychologists. Too many times people have been hurt that don't need to be. It's unnecessary. But we need to do a major reorganization of our police department. There's no question about that.
Candidate Awed.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I think that's the most important question in this election cycle. And let me just be very, very clear to the voters in Minneapolis. I think a lot of the suggestions being said, I'm in favor of really reshaping how we think about it. That means a cultural shift. If you look on our website, where really the details of what we're really proposing is on there, so I won't really elaborate too much on it, but I will say this. If we're just focusing on the measures and the models, I think we will be doing a disservice to the very black and brown communities that we're all trying to actually change something for. And my focus and my approach on this issue is really building trust and making sure that there is validation from communities of colors in whatever model moving forward. And the only way we do that is, as a lot of people are saying, together. That doesn't mean special interest cooks up exactly what this model looks like. It does not mean we can do it in a silo. It means the government and the people have to come in and have an honest conversation. And we're going to do that through a mechanism that I've been purporting and actually advocating for throughout the campaign. It's called the Citizens Assembly. And that's what you will get with A.J. Awed, a true healing on this issue. Thank you.
Candidate Benjigirtis.
I want to start by saying we need to have a conversation about colonialism and capitalism. And if we want safety, everyone needs to have a place to live. We need to start talking about healthcare and housing as human rights, and safety is a part of that. We cannot look at this as just a police issue. One of the things is, I've grown up on a farm. I didn't deal with police a whole lot. I come to a city. What do we do with the police? What do? They keep the people in line sometimes. Sometimes you call them for help. But the reaction you get depends on what's your income level and what's the color of your skin. This needs to change. We need to look at rent, the outrageous rising cost of living Rent control alone will not do it. This is a much bigger problem, and we have to get a new approach. And I want to say we should look into what can we do with a Minneapolis electronic digital currency that includes a basic income for every resident of this city.
Candidate Perry.
The main public service crisis plaguing our city right now is violence committed by individuals with firearms. I've lost 2 brothers, 2 brother-in-laws, and 2 of my best friends, so I understand, I feel what the families of LaDavion, Nicholas, Trinity, Anaya, London are going through. This is something that can be stopped. We keep talking about defunding the police, but Mayor Fry has defunded the recreation centers that do youth and young adult outreach, including the Step Up program at recreation centers like Falwell and North Minneapolis that used to reach and impact the lives of our youth. We have to totally reinforce this, offer pathways for them to come in, robotics programs, theater programs, music programs, different things, and pathways for them to get into law enforcement, teaching, nursing, public service positions. This is something that we can do. We have done it before. We need to bring people together. People keep talking about defund the police. Should we defund the police? No. Should we defry Minneapolis? I don't cuss, but hell yes. Thank you.
Candidate Knuth.
Thank you. Our city is less safe because of the lack of mayoral leadership by Jacob Fry. He has not kept his promise to reduce crime or to reform police because he's beholden to the status quo. And right now, the status quo is not the path to a safer Minneapolis. We need a more holistic approach to public safety to keep every person in this city, regardless of race, gender, income, level of ability, zip code, to make sure every person feels and is safe. It is unacceptable that kids in our city have been shot and killed, and it is unacceptable that police have killed people in our city. And we don't have to choose. We do not have to choose between public and safety and justice. And that's why I'm putting forward a whole systems approach to public safety, and I am clear. My vision of this public safety system absolutely includes police. Very clear it includes police. And I've heard people want more than a vision. They actually want a plan. So check out my plan. I worked on it with my team and dozens of policy and community leaders. It's at capeformpls.org/public safety.
Candidate Johnson.
Could you just reread the question for the audience, please?
Sure. What public safety problems do you view as most important, and what measures would you support to solve them?
In the last 4 years, I'm a part of Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence. My friend was murdered by the police on my front yard on a wellness check. And there is no one here on this panel who has been more in-depth and more knowledgeable of the actions of the police when they do murder somebody and what goes on after that. In Winston Smith's case, the washing of a body before they get so-called gun residue off the hands, and a mayor that will not stand up to the police or the union. We have got to have accountability. We have measures and legislation that has gone into the state legislation, and we have not had leaders who have stood up and named names when people will not pass this accountability and transparency legislation. Last year, we got Travis's bill passed, named after my friend Travis Jordan, which will actually end 911's call to respond to the police rather than being able to call to respond to mental health workers. And we passed that. Thank you.
Question 3 will be asked to the following candidates: Carney, Johnson, Benjigirtis, Winter, Fry, Knuth. Starting with candidate Carney. What policies would you support to curb the rise in gun violence and neighborhood crime like car break-ins and carjackings?
The police department is a law enforcement agency. It's tasked to enforce all laws. And we're down about 300 police right now on a de facto basis. As of the death of George Floyd, before that, our police chief was talking about a need for 400 more officers. So it seems to me that we're down about 700 officers. We need to have a well-staffed police department to provide public safety. It is fundamentally different to address this as a law enforcement question versus a public health question. Just as one example, What is the relationship between protecting property rights and public health? I think this proposed charter amendment is totally ill-conceived. How much, do I have 5 seconds? Okay. I am in favor of having 311 for non-emergency calls. When George Floyd was shot, that was not an emergency. 911 should never have been called to begin with.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson.
Could you read the question again, please?
What policies would you support to curb the rise in gun violence and neighborhood crime like car break-ins and carjackings?
Living on Morgan and Dowling, I have experienced this north side crime wave firsthand. Last fall, even having to run out of my house and compress a young man's face who had just been shot from his moving car from another moving car. We have a staffing problem, yes, with the police. We do need bodies that can do things. Do they need to be armed? Not necessarily. There's plans for that. What we can do is a tactical vision. Knowing how to get in and out of the north side is not that difficult. Putting up barriers to prevent the traffic violations that are happening and the escapes of criminals that are happening is something easily done with our city's resources. They showed that when they proved it by securing property over people during the protests. We need to use that same infrastructure to protect our streets.
Candidate Benjigurtis.
I don't know all the answers to this. I do know that I lived on 17th Avenue and 25th Street, and Minneapolis, the police abandoned that part of the city. And the only reason that block was safe is because people were out on the street. And then there's a great video of people who were standing on their yard, standing on their porch, getting shot at by the police. We need to get block club leaders. I've been a block club leader. We need block club leaders to work with the police. We need people to trust the police. We need to have a new conversation about what the heck are we doing, and how did we get into this situation in the first place? Why were people so upset? And then we need to hold gun manufacturers accountable. We need to hold businesses who profit from the violence accountable. And we need to look into what kind of appropriate use of technology. We don't want to become China, but we can use technology and cameras.
Candidate Winter.
As far as getting the guns off the streets again, the police could try a buyback program. I don't know if we have one of those now, but we should be pushing that more in the communities. Bottom line, we need our police force back. We're down 300 officers or so, and I think the new cadet class coming in is 18 new officers. They don't want to work in Minneapolis because they don't feel like the city is behind them, and for good reason, because of what happened. It needs to be rebuilt within the community. I'd like to get behind a cadet program in the high schools that has young kids getting into policing early and then going back out into their communities and putting a good face on it. If the city wants a full police department, we need to support them. We can reimagine it, we can reform, but bottom line, the city of Minneapolis is not safe.
Candidate Fry.
Well, as mayor, I'm the one that gets the calls at 2 or 3 in the morning from our police chief, noting that yet another brother or son or someone's child has been shot and killed. This kind of violence is unacceptable. And while other candidates who are sitting up here with me have consistently called to defund or at the very least further reduce the number of officers that we have had in this department, I have had an honest and consistent approach regardless of who I'm talking to. Yes, we need safety beyond policing, and our group violence intervention program focuses directly on some of the shootings that we're seeing in certain targeted areas of our city. And in order to make that program most effective, you need to make sure that you don't just have a one-dimensional police department. You need to have investigations. You need to have officers that can take 911 response, and you need a holistic measure as well. Crime is caused by deep-seated inequities, and simultaneously, it is an accelerator of those same inequities. We need to work on the process for the long term, and we need safety right now.
Candidate Knuth.
Too many families in our city are mourning the loss of children or friends lost to gun violence and praying for recovery of others impacted by gun violence. It is the issue we need to take on in our city. Unfortunately, we've heard police officers are down because we've seen failed leadership at the top in Minneapolis, and officers have left the job for a whole host of reasons. And we don't have we might talk about numbers, but right now we don't have a plan to actually reach the staffing numbers that have been funded by the city council. We need to work on that. We need to make sure those officers are smart, effective, and have a service mindset in our city. At the same time, we need a more holistic plan, and my plan is more than investing the $7.8 million proposed in the mayor's budget in violence prevention. It's investing $20 million, focused a lot on young men in our city ages 16 to 25 to make sure young people in our city feel invested in by the city and that our city is worth investing in.
Question 4 will be asked to Connor, Najad, Awed, Perry, Atkins, and Globus. Beginning with candidate Connor. One primary concern with the organization of our city government is lack of accountability. What changes would you support to provide better accountability?
Thank you for the question. Well, number one, with accountability, there has to be transparency. And that's where we're sorely lacking in our government right now. Our leader has, since the murder of George Floyd, stepped back from leading our city in terms of accounting for what is going on in the streets and what is going on in the government. So what we need to do is have regular occurring meetings and reporting that is communicated to the public on a daily basis through the media, through social media, and all mechanisms, including meeting physically in various locations in the city. The mayor of our city needs to be out there nonstop, out in front of the issues and on the front lines. We don't have time for nibbling around the edges. We need bold leadership and bold action immediately, and that requires bold transparency. Thank you.
Candidate Najad.
In order to have accountability, we need to make sure we have more people included in the decision-making process from all parts of the city. That's why, as mayor, I'm going to propose an unprecedented $10 million for participatory budgeting so that our city can lead alongside other cities like Seattle and Austin who are saying we trust communities to invest in the hyper-local solutions that you need to succeed. I will also move more funding into constituent services because right now there simply aren't enough staff for city council aides to be able to help all the residents who have many needs in this city. You know I will be accountable to you as mayor because that's the work I do now. I educate community members on how to get involved in the city budget process and policymaking. Please visit my website, SheilaForThePeople.com, to learn more.
Candidate Awed.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this one's a real simple answer. I mean, you have to support question 1 on the charter. The Charter for Change, I think, really addresses and answers a lot of those accountability issues. Simply put, that we have a 14 boss problem currently in the city of Minneapolis. I mean, if we stay in the structure we have, we'll continue to have a lack of accountability. But I believe, at least with the work that has been done with the Charter for Change, the accountability will come. And again, with a mayor who's the only person to blame when issues of crisis happens, I think that will bring natural accountability in the city as we make that change. So I recommend everybody in the city of Minneapolis to support that amendment. Outside of that, I mean, I think when we're talking about accountability at large, transparency is one of it. But Also, just not being afraid to get really uncomfortable. I mean, I think the city has a really bad precedent in dodging tough issues and really falling back to just the status quo and establishment. And I will be honest with the people of Minneapolis, the way you're hearing me speak right now is the uncomfortability you'll probably see as the leader of Minneapolis. So,
Candidate Perry.
Transparency and accountability are paramount. Communities across our city, including the one that I live in, have been begging and pleading for transparency from the mayor's office all the way down to the police and the first responders that work to keep our city safe. Transparency, it's something that if it's not there, people will not have the trust in our institutions that they need to have. And then accountability comes in when discipline's necessary, the discipline should be there. Officer Chauvin had multiple complaints against him, and Mayor Fry and other leaders allowed that to go unchecked. We have to make sure that those things are in place so that residents in our city can feel safe when they pick up the phone to call for help. Accountability also goes down to somebody was talking about block clubs earlier. We have neighborhood organizations all around our city that are set up in each neighborhood that work as arms of the city. They get funding from the city to provide safety, resources, different things for the communities. We have to hold them accountable as well and have them be transparent about where that money's going and who that money is serving.
Candidate Atkins.
I'm sorry, could you reread the question, please?
I will. One primary concern with the organization of our city government is lack of accountability. What changes would you support to provide better accountability?
All right, thank you. Something that I'm running on, and I mentioned before, is I'm consistently running on police reform. That is almost entirely what my campaign is about. How do we hold bad officers accountable? Oftentimes I'm hearing about transforming the different processes to hold them accountable, suspending them, things like that. What I've proposed is enforcing a rule that would require all police officers to carry professional liability insurance. When you think about it, plumbers, electricians, contractors, even some journalists have to carry some form of professional liability insurance. We as owners of vehicles and cars have to carry insurance in the event that we make a mistake or do someone harm. Why shouldn't the police have to carry such a thing? If the police were required to do that, officers like the officer who killed Terrence Franklin would not have been allowed to stay on the force when they rack up $700,000 in city payouts for their wrongdoings.
Candidate Globus.
Well, first of all, accountability starts with the office of the mayor. People need to be held accountable in this city. I've seen too long that people spread around the blame. People aren't being called to the carpet. People need to be held responsible. For example, reworking the police union contract. That contract needs to be negotiated very strenuously. I'm an attorney. I want to sit in on all those discussions and make sure that that police union contract is reworked so it's workable, so that good cops stay on the force and they get promotions and bad cops come off the force. We need to negotiate hard on that specific contract. Also, the mayor needs to jump in and be there on top of things. He or she is the one person who speaks for the entire city. The city council doesn't speak for the entire city, the mayor does. So accountability starts with the office of the mayor.
All right, question 5 will be asked to Atkins, Carney, Johnson, Najad, Winter, and Fry. Starting with candidate Atkins. How should Minneapolis be preparing for climate change?
I think there's a lot of different things that the city can do to prepare for climate change. The most significant one is removing laws and regulations that make it very difficult to utilize renewable energy on your own property. I was talking to a guy at the state fair who works with a company out of Japan, where they manufacture wind turbines that can be used for residential properties. They're small units. They can be used here. They provide renewable, safe, clean energy. But there are different laws and regulations in the city of Minneapolis on such things. For instance, only a structure that is 4 stories or taller can have such a thing. We should eliminate things like that so that people everywhere, whether they're in a 1-story home or a 4-story apartment complex, can utilize such technology.
Candidate Carney.
Glad you asked. I've got a book out called My JIT Energy. This is a review copy of it. I'm working on a patent, and we'll try to get that done before the election to get this thing out. But I've got a plan to deliver energy in small quantities to moving vehicles while they're moving, either in the form of battery charge or hydrogen gas. Internal combustion engines, ICE engines, can run on hydrogen. The byproduct is water. We need to figure out how to have our vehicles run on clean energy. And we can also capture carbon dioxide that is emitted, putting them into these modules, and we can actually reprocess that with the same technology approach that's used for splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen. So we can actually recycle hydrocarbon energy that comes from fossil fuel into liquid form that you pour in your gas tank. So I'll be laying this out. Republicans got to get going on this issue. It's a very important one.
Candidate Johnson.
I have a whole list of things here. I'll say a few key words: green fleets, incentive-laced carpooling. But really, there's a Congress of American Mayors that has an extensive plan, very closely parroted by the Paris Climate Control, that you can look up. What I'm going to do now is be silent, understand that we're on stolen land, and there are water protectors up north trying to stop Line 3, which is the biggest thing that Minnesotans can do to help our climate and environment. So I'm going to be quiet. Please use the rest of your time to pray for those water protectors.
Candidate Najad.
Thank you, Candidate Johnson. My family is from Fond du Lac, so Line 3 runs through my tribal lands. So we absolutely need to use the 2024 energy negotiations to demand cleaner energy investments and divest from pipelines. I'm also proud to include municipal shoveling on my mayoral platform, which will reduce salt use that is poisoning our local waters, will increase accessibility for people with disabilities, for folks who want to use transit, for anyone who's trying to get anywhere on the sidewalk, and will provide green jobs. I'm also a proud supporter of local BIPOC-led urban land use programs, like the East Phillips Indoor Urban Farm, which will include local food, affordable housing, and opportunities for us to create environmental stewardship in one of the largest American Indian populations in the city. Thank you.
Candidate Winter.
Well, I think Minneapolis has been doing a pretty good job since 2013 with trying to be more green. Our carbon emissions are way down. I'm not going to talk about all the other issues that the other candidates are going to bring up. I'm going to focus on one, and that's the flooding going around Hiawatha and Nokomis in that area. Hiawatha Golf Course has become a real problem for the city. Half of it floods every year, and the park board has done nothing to take care of that other than pump water out. I've been speaking with a group that's called the Hiawatha Project that would like to have the U of M come in and do a study on the land and then move forward with an architectural solution to the flooding issue in that area. Because if we don't address that, it's going to be a real issue for all the homeowners over there.
Candidate Fry.
Climate change is clearly the issue of our generation. The glaciers are melting, the lungs of the world are on fire, and it is incumbent on all of us, including municipalities, to act. And we have. We've established a social cost of carbon at $42 per metric ton. We've established clear goals on getting to 100% clean and renewable electricity by 2023 in the city enterprise and by 2030 in the entire city. We've established a green business cost share that has reduced carbon by tons. We've also established fees for pollution. So for every pound of pollution that is emitted into the atmosphere, you're now charged a fee. In the first year alone, we reduced the numbers by around 6 million pounds of carbon and 18,000 pounds of criteria pollutants. Now we're just getting started because we know that we need to go even further. A huge chunk of the carbon that is emitted is done so through automobile use. We need to make sure that we have bus-only lanes, alternative mechanisms for transportation. We need to be moving towards clean and renewable energy, and we need to push utilities as far as they will possibly go to make sure that we can get there.
Question 6 will be asked to Awed, Globus, Carney, Perry, Benjagurtis, and Knuth. Name 1 or 2 actions you would propose to make Minneapolis a city that provides equality, social justice, and economic opportunities for all community members. Candidate Perry. Oh, I'm sorry, Candidate Awed.
Yep. Thank you for that question. So if you look on my website, there's a promise called, Welcoming Minneapolis, which is very focused on just that issue. And one of the quick things that I would love to do, first and foremost, is create a department, or I would say a deputy mayor. We can play with language as we feel, to really focus on immigrant communities and immigrant communities coming to the city, especially as it relates to making sure we advocate them on the city level, on the state level, to fight for them to have licenses, to make sure that undocumented people are feeling welcome in this city and are actually being protected from agencies on the federal level. And for me, as someone that's an immigrant himself, I know very small things really matter, right? And having assistance in opening up a bank account, being able to transverse, the difficult language barriers, and really having a department really dedicated to that. And currently, the Department of Community Engagement does great work in that. And to me, my focus is really investing a lot more in making sure to have a neighborhood-centric approach while we have that issue.
Candidate Globus.
Can you repeat that question, please?
I can. Name 1 or 2 actions you would propose to make Minneapolis a city that provides equality, social justice, and economic opportunities for all community members.
Thank you. First of all, everyone counts in this city of Minneapolis. Every life in the city is important. There's rich, there's poor. People at City Hall need to be the stewards and look out for everybody in our city to make sure everybody's taken care of. We've had a homeless problem. One thing I like is a program called mini housing that we've been putting in warehouses to help create private housing for individuals. Another program that I'd like to do in North Minneapolis is to host a club on business, how business gets done, bring in business leaders to coach and talk to people in that area every day, and talk to them and tell them what it takes every day to become successful in business, in the law, in trades. We need to take a very hands-on approach here in Minneapolis because every person counts in our city.
Candidate Carney.
I'd like to make a comment first. Paul Johnson was answering a question, and he wanted to set aside some time for people to pray. And the moderator immediately moved on to the next speaker. If somebody wants to use their time for encouraging people to stop and think about something or to pray, I think that needs to be respected. That's his time. That really kind of bothered me. This is a question that I find somewhat troubling. I'm strongly in favor of economic opportunity and equal opportunity for everybody. I'm frankly puzzled by the questions about equality and social justice at the municipal level. I think we need to provide a safe city. We need to make the basics work for our city. when they do work, then all parts of our society tend to work better. And that is my view, but I'm sorry, I guess I'm just not woke.
Candidate Perry.
Equity and social justice mean absolutely nothing if you're not here alive to enjoy it. The city of North Minneapolis has some of the worst asthma rates in the country for the children, especially in BIPOC communities, black communities in North Minneapolis. So I appreciate Mr. Carney bringing up the hydrogen power. That's going to be our solution for moving our city forward. Hydrogen power, it meets zero emissions, and not only does it emit zero emissions, it brings in and cleans the air, the dirty air that's already there. We have been working on a partnership with Toyota to bring the Toyota Mirai to the city of Minneapolis. Hydrogen powered, California is already using it. It's something that we can do. Toyota has agreed to give all Minneapolis residents free gas for 3 years for purchasing that vehicle. It's something that we can bring here, we can manufacture right here in North Minneapolis. Our communities have bared the brunt of all of these carbon emissions. They should bear the benefits of bringing something like this to our city, as well as building something that can generate revenue for the community, generate investment opportunities like a casino with family entertainment. There's absolutely nothing for our children to do in the city of Minneapolis. We have to go to other cities to find something to do for our children.
Thank you.
We have a unique opportunity, and we're going to take advantage of it.
Candidate Benjigurtis.
I think the first thing I want to do is I want to hire everyone in this room, the 12 candidates who took the time to show up and talk about this. I'm going to do that with my 10 to 12 years of experience with digital currencies. I'm going to issue a Minneapolis electronic digital currency. And we're going to give everyone, all of the candidates who filed, a basic income. We're going to start there. And then so that all of you can work full time on all of these issues, because there are way more issues here than any one of us could possibly deal with. Right. And then I'm going to go back to my original campaign promise that I started in 2013, and I'm going to make Minneapolis 100% renewable in 10 years from the first time I said it. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to go find a bunch of farmers, and we're going to put up wind turbines, and we're going to generate electricity, and we're going to make hydrogen, and we're going to make renewable ammonia, and we're going to convert the entire city bus fleet to biodiesel in 2 months.
Candidate Knuth.
The racial disparities of Minneapolis are unacceptable, and they hold individuals back and they hold our city back. I have two areas I think we could focus. Let's say public safety is the area. We've talked about that a lot. Two additional areas. One is climate preparedness and resilience. When you ask the climate question, it's how do we prepare? Every candidate, including the mayor, talked about just reducing emissions. That's important. It's also not going to prepare us for the impacts that are already here. In 2018, as Chief Resilience Officer, I told the mayor we didn't have a climate resilience strategy. We still don't have one. And to reduce the racial disparities of climate impacts, we need to address urban heat. Redline neighborhoods are hotter than other neighborhoods in the city. We need to undo sources of pollution, like moving northern metals out of the city. And we need to invest our city stormwater and surface water infrastructure to reduce flooding. Second, we need ownership and economic opportunity. What I mean by that is pathways to home ownership, a universal basic income pilot programs in various parts of the city focused in communities of color, college savings plans for every single kid born in this city, and making sure the clean energy opportunities create both jobs and ownership opportunities for people of color.
All right. Question 7 will be asked to Candidate Perry, Knuth, Najad, Connor, Awad, and Atkins. Starting with Candidate Perry. What measures do you support that will decrease homelessness with the goal of eliminating it?
The first thing will be housing first. My girls and I were walking down Lake Street the other day, and there's literally people laying on our sidewalks in our city, and that should be unacceptable to any of us. We've almost normalized this pain. What we can do is do housing first with wraparound social services, get people off of the streets into programs that can get them made whole again, reconcile them, and get them back onto their feet. Affordable housing, we have to have affordable housing, not based on the current system, the 30% of the median area income. It has to be individualized. What's affordable to you may not be affordable to me. What's affordable to me may not be affordable to you. It has to be individualized, no more than 30% of income, and pathways to ownership. There has to be, we keep talking about rent control. Rent control will be obsolete if we make pathways to home ownership. There has to be investments made in communities to where people can have pride in the communities that they live in, and we can help support each other in our communities and make Minneapolis a safer place for all of us to live, work, and play, including our children.
Candidate Knuth.
In the last few years in our city, we have seen the rise in homelessness and more unhoused neighbors across our city. And it has been a real challenge for levels of government to come together and level up what is needed to make sure we're addressing homelessness in the city. And so as mayor, I will use my experience working with the county, working with the state, working with the federal government to not point fingers and say it's the park board's problem or it's the county's problem or it's the state's problem. It is our problem as a city. And as mayor, I will lead, convene, resource what we need to meet the needs of our unhoused neighbors. We also need to address the cost of housing and make sure we don't force families into the traumatic experience of eviction. I support investing more in housing, more in public housing, and making sure we are protecting renters with supports to avoid evictions, rent stabilization, and making sure that every person in Minneapolis has a safe, stable place to call home as the foundation of safety in our city.
Candidate Najad.
If you look around 4 years ago to now, things have gotten better, not worse. I've been doing work around safety and housing on the ground. I remember when the pandemic hit, I thought, surely our city leaders are going to jump into action. And I was surprised when I had to call the council and mayor's office to demand that porta potties were provided at encampments. And our individual calls were not enough. We had to get hundreds of people to call in to get 4 porta potties in encampments across the city. So dozens of neighbors and I banded together. We built hand washing stations, and we created a food distribution program across the city. As mayor, I'm going to prioritize compassion, not eviction, housing first solutions, and harm reduction, which is the missing link in our current housing system.
Candidate Connor.
Thank you. I completely agree with housing first. I've spent over hundreds of hours over the last several years representing low-income tenants and homeowners across Minneapolis on issues relating to eviction, affordable housing, and discrimination. And I can tell you that things are bad. Mayor Fry will tell you that we spend more money per capita on affordable housing than any other city. Well, that's not what we should be looking at. We should be looking at results. And the results are too many people who need affordable housing are not getting it, including a person who was working at a checkout line I talked to last week who moved from Minneapolis to St. Paul because, in her view, she'd been living here for 2 decades and finally realized that the affordable housing here is not affordable and she could get a much better deal in St. Paul. We have to look at, for homelessness, more mini housing in warehouses. We need to, number one, hold the developers' feet to the fire on affordable housing. I know Jacob Fry and his administration has allowed developers to renege on deals that they agreed to for affordable housing. We need a supplemental voucher system, and we need to talk about livability. So many people are living in unhealthy conditions, and we need to boost our inspection programs immediately.
Candidate Awad.
Thank you. First and foremost, public housing needs to be protected at all costs. Privatization is a danger for it. So as mayor, I would do that. Moving past that, I mean, homelessness is really an issue in the city, and it doesn't really take much to really understand what the problem is. We don't have much incentives when it comes to actually developing more property, or something that we call affordable housing, even though much of it really isn't affordable because it uses area median income as a measure, and the most Minneapolisans really don't meet that measure. So to really answer that question, for me, I'm looking to tax the people that can afford. I don't know why it's not a comfortable conversation. I still have not heard a lot of people talking about that. And I think renters can afford to do that, especially the ones that live in luxury apartments like myself. So if we want to build more affordable housing units and even build more public housing units, we need to actually free ourselves and advocate on the state level to be able to start taxing renters, because there are more renters in the city of Minneapolis than homeowners. Thank you.
Candidate Atkins.
Could you repeat the question, please?
What measures do you support that will decrease homelessness with the goal of eliminating it?
Well, I think probably outside of the affordable housing issue, I'd say homelessness is probably the most difficult issue for us to really tackle, because there are so many other issues that kind of are intrinsically kind of entangled within it. I've heard a lot of talk up here tonight about the importance of addressing mental health issues. I think the city needs to identify a facility where we can kind of centralize and help people cope with mental health issues in the city. We also need to look at the things that drive homelessness besides mental health issues, which are oftentimes drug-related issues. Unfortunately, we have a system that punishes people for drug use by throwing them in cages and not offering them more compassionate options such as rehabilitation or treatment. That results in people losing their jobs, putting people in the cages, sentencing them with a criminal record, causes them to lose jobs, so they can't afford their homes. So then they end up out on the street. We need to reform our drug policies as well as our mental health policies if we're going to get at the root of the homelessness problem.
All right, question number 8. We'll hear from candidates Fry, Johnson, Knuth, Winter, Benjigirtis, and Globus. For candidate Fry, how would you support landlords in creating more affordable housing?
From the very beginning, we started from the standpoint that housing is a right, that everyone deserves to go home to that safe place at night to rest their head on the pillow and to rejuvenate for the next day. To get there, you need a multifaceted approach. Yes, we have invested record amounts in affordable housing with a focus on deeply affordable housing. In fact, many of the candidates up here right now are touting the very programs that we piloted and began ourselves, whether that's more representation in Minneapolis or Stable Homes, Stable Schools that has now served over 3,000 kids and their families. And yes, you also need to work with landlords. And here's what we've done. We started to work on the 4D program, which provides up to a 40% break in your property taxes if you can keep at least a chunk of the units at or below 60% of area median income. That's working in conjunction with landlords, not against them. And we've gone even further than that to make sure that we can have that low income and transitional housing so that people who are experiencing homelessness can pull themselves out. Have we done enough? No. We need to do more, but we've led the nation.
Candidate Johnson.
Well, my answer might be unpopular with some, but I don't believe necessarily in having to work with people who are subjugating the more vulnerable communities, the BIPOC communities, with rent that is 58% above. 58% of the African American community are cost burdened in their rent. 44% of white folks in Minneapolis. That means we have a landlord problem. Roughly 50% of the homes are only owned in Minneapolis. Without home ownership, we don't have city pride. Without city pride, we have where we're at now. We need to actually cause possibly the landlords who have more than 4, 5, 6 properties, that needs to be almost not profitable for them tax-wise. We need to stop cutting their taxes. Those homes should be available for the people of Minneapolis to purchase, not to pay twice what they would in mortgage.
Candidate Knuth.
When we talk about working with landlords in the city, we need to be clear that not every landlord in the city is the same. That's why when I talk about rent stabilization, I am absolutely clear that small landlords who are invested in our city and invested in building great lives for their families and our community absolutely need to be at the table so we are getting the design of rent stabilization right. I will also say, when I'm looking at landlords who are national companies who don't see housing in our city as a foundation of safety for families and stability for neighborhoods, but rather as a way to make a whole bunch of money, I'm not as concerned about working with those landlords because I don't see them as having the best interests of the people of Minneapolis in mind. For example, the many homes on the north side that are single-family homes owned by large national property managers, we need to work to get those into the hands of smaller landlords and have pathways to homeownership for people to invest in and build the stability and safety through a decent, safe place to call home.
Candidate Winter.
I agree with Mayor Fry that housing is a right for all. And not all landlords are the bad guys. But when you talk about rent stabilization, that's the same thing as rent control. I believe in a free market. I believe in supply and demand. I think if more money is given, more grants to nonprofit developers, I spoke with one today at length, if they had some more money and some more help from the city, they would be able to buy up some of these commercial properties and some of these homes, rehab them, and get our less fortunate people into them. The path for home ownership in Minneapolis is a real problem. I'm not sure how to solve that other than creating more housing for everybody. Thank you.
Candidate Benjigurtis.
One of the reasons I'm living in Minneapolis is because I think cities are the best thing we can do for climate change. Another reason I'm living in a city, downtown, in a condo, is we cannot keep turning the world's best farmland into subdivisions. The idea of single-family homes, I cannot see how it can work. We have to have cooperative ownership. The way I will help landlords is I will make them a better offer from co-ops and community-owned and condo development where we bring home ownership back to multifamily, high-density, mixed-use buildings. One of the ways we can do that is we can issue a digital currency so that we are not subject to whatever Washington, D.C. decides monetary policies would be. I want our Minneapolis Mayoral Council to decide what our monetary policy is going to be and how much and what the standards are going to be for mortgage-backed securities issued in Minneapolis instead of letting Fannie Mae and Freddie Fannie decide who gets a loan.
Candidate Globus.
You know, it's a big table that everybody sits at, that property owners are there, renters are there, other parties are there. And it's popular to favor one over the other, but we need to look at a holistic approach to things. I believe in real-world solutions, market solutions. One solution I have is a lot of renters come to the table and they have credit that's nicked. The city needs to be more active in guaranteeing those renters credit so that they can rent apartments. I've talked to apartment owners who have apartments available, but they can't get the types of renters that they expect to get on their credit apps. Number two, property tax reduction we can do for building owners, small building owners, so then they can pass those tax savings on to their renters so the renters pay less rent. Real world solutions, market solutions. There's a lot of people at the table.
Question number 9 will be addressed by candidates Carney, Connor, Benjigurtis, Perry, Atkins, and Najad. Starting with candidate Carney. Many businesses and nonprofits along the Lake Street corridor have experienced unprecedented disruptions, destruction, and trauma in the last 18 months. As mayor, what steps would you take to ensure that this vital commercial corridor is able to fully recover and thrive?
I've been working as a school bus driver part-time, and after the death of George Floyd, I was running food runs through that entire neighborhood. It was a total disaster trying to get a 40-foot school bus through there. We have to go back to the basics. The issue is to provide public safety and to provide an infrastructure where you have streets that are clear and where people feel safe to do business, where property is protected. And when we're doing all these things, when we're simply providing the basics that Minneapolis has historically provided, over time, everyone and all businesses will do better. I've seen a very remarkable recovery in that whole area since then. It's progressing already. But our fundamental issue is to make sure that Minneapolis is safe and that everybody feels safe and welcome here.
Candidate Connor.
That's a great question. Part of my platform is a small business boom. And in addition to the area you're referring to, we were at Open Streets just this weekend on West Broadway. And West Broadway needs a lot of help as well. What we can do, number one, is use some of our federal emergency funding. We have a lot of unallocated money sitting out there to foster the development of BIPOC and immigrant businesses. We can also create a lot more public-private partnerships for low-income loans, low-interest loans that have been very successful across the country. We need more of that. We need to create a one-stop shop for small business owners where they can come for all the information they need, and they have a resource and a guide to help them through the process. And the people that are helping in the city level need to be trained the right way. We need to have people in the city administration getting out of the way of small businesses and facilitating their growth versus being roadblocks. And this is a common theme coming up every time I have a discussion with small business owners around the city. We need to focus on these communities, the vulnerable communities, and get them pumping. Thank you.
Candidate Benjigurtis.
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Many businesses and nonprofits along the Lake Street corridor have experienced unprecedented disruptions, destruction, and trauma in the last 18 months. As mayor, what steps would you take to ensure that this vital commercial corridor is able to fully recover and thrive?
This is a hard question. I mean, I can pick a soundbite solution, but I'm going to start with, if we had a digital currency that all of those businesses could accept and everyone in the city had that currency, we can start by doing a pilot program to give all those businesses the technical support they need to accept a currency that we've created locally. And then we can issue loans to all of those businesses so that they can rebuild. And we need to make sure that this is something that gives ownership to the people in the businesses, that we're not just providing a new, creating a new exclusive class of landowners as the place gets gentrified. How do we have new immigrants that come to Lake Street, come to any part of Minneapolis? How are we going to let new people that move here be owners in this city, owners of businesses, owners of housing, owners of their own destiny?
Candidate Perry.
Total destruction definitely fits the bill. We still have Lake Street. I live on Lake Street. We still have the whole corridor littered with rubbles of pile from businesses that were burned down, people's lives and livelihoods that were destroyed. There's things that we can do about this. We're going to build the business reconciliation to where we can connect those business owners, the ones that are still struggling to stay open today, the ones that had to close down permanently, giving up everything that they fought with their blood, sweat, and tears to gain, and then even the potential businesses that could not open after all of that, the jobs that could not be created after all of that. We can do this by bringing people together and connecting them to grant funding that's already there. Just connecting people to those resources and then providing additional resources to make sure that we can make those people whole. It's something that we can do. People are so interested. They just don't know what resources are out there. So we have to have people in our leadership that's willing to get on the streets with the people and connect them to those different resources to make sure that we can get the businesses back up and running and get businesses open to create even more generational wealth within those communities. You can't leave your baby a job, but you can leave them a business that may last a lifetime.
Candidate Atkins.
Well, I think we got to take a multifaceted approach to this. Things that I would propose doing are suspending property and business taxes for businesses along that corridor, so they do have kind of the elasticity to rebound from the past 18 months. I would also look at reducing various laws and regulations and red tape that they have to jump through, not only to operate a business, but to start a business. Obviously, safety is a big thing. People aren't going to be going to parts of the city. They're not going to be patronizing those businesses if they don't feel it's safe. One thing that I think that we are solely lacking in the state of Minnesota, and I think it's absolutely shocking we have not done it yet, is the legalization of marijuana. It's kind of shocking that our conservative neighbors in South Dakota have managed to vote to legalize it, but we haven't. As mayor, I would work and do everything in my power to make this city a sanctuary city for marijuana use.
Candidate Najad.
I love Lake Street. I live off of Lake Street, and I work for a small business that's located right off Lake Street, very near to the 3rd Precinct, Ricardo Levins Morales Art Studio. I believe that we need to invest in one-on-one solutions to help business owners on Lake Street because everyone's facing unique challenges. That's why I would like to invest in individual outreach workers who will go to business to match the right services with each business owner. I also want to fund worker protections because as we're moving forward, rebuilding our economy, we need to make sure that we are protecting workers as well as business owners. Finally, I'd like to increase funding for our Step Up program because our youth have been underinvested in for far too long, and our city has the opportunity to build safety, economic vitality, and community well-being through investments in our youth.
All right, this is our final question, and then we'll move into the 1-minute closing remarks after this group. This question will be asked to candidates Johnson, Awed, Connor, Winter, Fry, and Globus. Candidate Johnson, all businesses are feeling the effects of COVID-19, but this is especially apparent in the downtown area as fewer office workers are returning to work there. What policies do you support to help downtown stay vibrant?
It was actually one of my major starting points in this campaign is the reimagination of downtown and what it can be. Obviously, there's a ton of office space. There are levels and grades to that as far as what it costs, but we need to make that space affordable for a small business bloom like Mr. Connor is talking about. We need the availability for small business entrepreneurship to have space to grow, a centralized space where ideas can flourish amongst these small businesses and also have a common use of a lot of their infrastructure where that lends to itself to the Green Deal of less deliveries, less vehicle traffic, things of that nature, by involving the community and having more of that idea being downtown. The other thing, obviously, recently has been safety downtown in the nightclub and restaurant district. Improving that with beat cops actually on foot, making that as well as the traffic stops there, and possibly making more community walkways at night in downtown.
Thank you. Candidate Awed.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think the direct correlation with that is public safety. I mean, if downtown isn't safe and there's the level of uncertainty as it relates to businesses coming back and really investing in the city of Minneapolis, whether it be large corporations or just mom and pop shops that want an opportunity to actually create a livelihood for their families. So for me, I think that is going to be the biggest factor really relating to how downtown businesses function. Of course, there's the other element of really investing and giving opportunities. I mean, downtown isn't cheap, but Minneapolis does a lot of programs, right? There's a lot of opportunity for, to subsidize and invest in local neighborhood organizations to even be downtown, but more importantly, to have small immigrant communities possibly be downtown. And for me, I think having that framework is really what I'm invested in, and that's what I will do. But let's just get realistic. downtown isn't going to be flourishing or bubbling, or we're going to really sustain that tax base without safety being addressed. And we need confidence and a
Thank
clear
you.
direction. Thank you.
Candidate Connor.
I agree that safety is a main priority to getting the downtown up and running at the level we'd like to see. I did a ride-along in the 1st Precinct 2 Fridays ago, and that was 9 p.m. till 4:30 a.m., and my shift ended with a 16-round shooting at 9th and Hennepin. So I was yellow taping off 9th Street. That can't be the case, and that was following a woman who was murdered on 9th Street. We've got to get a hold of that right away, and that means safe streets, safe streets, safe streets, and making sure we're holding on to the good police we do have. They need our support in a big way. I'm an engineer by training. I worked for the company that invented the transistor before I went back to law school. And then I litigated patents, which is inventions, in court for 17 years around the country and overseas. And I got to say, I've lived in a lot of cities, and I will say that Minneapolis is a wonderful place. And we need a big ambassador to, number one, sell downtown to businesses around the country and around Minneapolis. We've got a lot of Fortune 500s that can move small operations here. We got to make major incentives for startups and other companies, and particularly focus on technology companies. Thank you very much.
Candidate Winter.
Downtown Minneapolis is one of my favorite places to be. I worked down there for 3 years. I delivered wine and spirits. I got to know a lot of the bar owners. What they want are safe streets. Nobody's going downtown anymore to drink or eat because it's not safe. Minneapolis, to me, is the North Star of the Midwest, and I'm just fiercely proud of it. And to see it neglected like this breaks my heart. I think all the businesses down there now should have giant tax breaks because the city has completely let them down. It's the Wild West. There's people racing cars, firing their guns off wherever they want, with, no repercussions because we do not have enough police. Let's reform and rebuild our police department and make all of our city streets safe again. Thank you.
Candidate Fry.
Well, let me take you back to March of 2020. I was about to sign an emergency declaration regarding COVID-19 and the global pandemic. And simultaneously, I knew that in instituting a lot of the necessary regulations that we needed to do in order to save lives, we were also going to lose a whole lot of money in our city budget coffers. Now, I'm proud of, and I stand by, the decision to be the first city in the entire state to institute a mask mandate, the first city in the entire state to require that restaurants and bars would shut down. And simultaneously, we've known that those shutdowns, especially over the last year and a half, have had drastic impacts on both our city budget as well as the vibrancy of downtown. There's several ways that we need to get this back. Yes, safety is of paramount concern, and I've addressed that in previous questions. Second, we have devoted ARP funds to these specific small businesses that have suffered and eliminated license fees in several instances. Also, we need to be bringing people back to downtown. And a big part of that is making sure that we're remembering all of the things that we love about our city. Our city will rebound.
Candidate Globus.
I'm actually in the hotel and hospitality industry, in that business. And downtown needs the same rules for COVID as the suburbs do. The mayor talks about how he's proud of putting stronger regulations and more stringent regulations going above CDC guidelines on downtown businesses. Just last week, one of the businesses closed right on my corner, Devani's Pizza. It had been there for years. The mayor needs to be a cheerleader for downtown, for the hospitality industry. He needs to get the restaurants back marketing, special programs, marketing programs. He needs to be looking at every marketing program coming out of the city. He needs to get the parking ramps to give free parking. He has the bully pulpit. The mayor has that power. It's time to start promoting downtown instead of tying it up in a rope so that it can't function properly.
Thank you, candidates, for your thoughtful answers, and I'm sure you wished you had more time on a lot of those. Now we'd like to hear closing remarks from each of you. You'll have 1 more minute to address the viewers about anything you'd like them to know. We'll begin with candidate Knuth and come up this side of the table, and then hop over to candidate Benjigurtis and end with candidate Johnson. All right, and I will call your name before when it's your turn. So candidate Knuth.
Well, thank you for the event and the forum tonight. I'm Kate Knuth, and I'm running for mayor. And you know what, Minneapolis, we have been going through a really tough time. And our mayoral leadership, or I should say more, the absence of our mayoral leadership has left a vacuum in which we are more divided as a city and we are less safe as a city because the absence of mayoral leadership. And when I'm out listening to people across the city, I hear those divides. But underneath those divides, I hear something deeper and more true about Minneapolis. And that is the people of our city love Minneapolis. And we are deeply, deeply committed to doing the work we need to do to make a more just, a safer, and a more resilient city. I am ready to be your partner and to call forth the leadership of every person in every neighborhood to make the city of Minneapolis that we know we can have and that we deserve to have. I ask for your #1 choice support in November. I'm Kate Knuth, and I'd love to be your mayor, your ally, and your leader as we navigate this transformative moment in our city.
Candidate Atkins.
Thank you for having me tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to people and answer these questions. My campaign is about offering a choice, not an echo. I believe that the core issue that our city is facing, so much of what is tying back to it is public safety. I believe that we do need more police, but we need very substantial, very real reforms on them so that they do not run roughshod over our lives, so that they do not kill innocent people. I know that we have ranked choice voting in this city, and I know that pretty much everyone in the city votes DFL. I would love to be, if I'm not going to be your #1 choice, I would love to be your #2 or #3. Keep in mind that you can vote for me as a #2 or #3 and still go back to your family at Thanksgiving and say that you did vote for a DFLer. Thank you.
Candidate Connor.
So let's face it, the city is getting away from us. And there's no time for nibbling around the edges on issues that matter most. We need bold action and bold leadership. We need a leader to be out in front of the issues and on the front lines. And I'm the kind of leader that can lead us on a march directly into the headwinds to tackle the most serious issues we are facing as a city. We need action, and we need it now. If you want safe streets, affordable and livable housing for all of Minneapolis, and a small business boom, please vote for me, Clint Connor. You can rank me #1. I will even take #2. We do have ranked choice voting here, but keep me in mind, Clint Connor. Thank you. Together as one, we'll get it done.
Candidate Carney.
Hi, Bob again, Carney Jr. again. I'm the only Republican on the panel. And so I want to talk a little bit about the importance of having a robust Republican Party participating in politics, both at the level of the urban core cities and around the state. I think it's very important to our state to have 2 competitive parties. I describe myself as a candidate journalist, and I'm going to be investigating the recent sex trafficking and the gold cash scandal involving Tony Lazzaro. He's a Republican operative, and he's in jail right now. We need to find out more about how Trumpism has been controlling the Republican Party, and we need to stop it cold. I've been very encouraged about listening to everybody here. It's been a very good and thoughtful discussion. I'm inviting everybody to a peaceable assembly zone for politically homeless people at the Hennepin County Government Center. That's the site of the 2011 Occupy movement. I'm going to be down there Wednesday starting that. We need to have discussions among everybody about what the future of our city will be.
Candidate Perry.
Thank you, and thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's forum. Thank you, Ms. Laura, for moderating, and thank you to the candidates for being here, for being accountable to the voters, and thank you all for tuning in tonight. We talked a little bit about Lake Street. We did not talk about George Floyd Square. The communities over there, the small businesses that have been impacted over the last almost 2 years now. There's the justice resolution that Mayor Fry was given last year that has not been implemented yet. There's been progress made on it, but it should have been signed and implemented in its original form, and it's something that we can do. Stable Homes, Stable Schools, Mayor Fry also talked about that. That's an awesome program. I commended him when it was implemented. It only serves 18 of our 100 Minneapolis public schools, and that does not include all the charter and private schools. It should include every single Minneapolis resident, and that's something that we can do. We were talking about we didn't have the money for this or the money for that. We got $135 million last May. We're getting another $135 million next May, and that is in addition to the regular city budget. God has blessed this city with a unique opportunity to do so many things. All we have to do is have a leader in there that wants to do them. As Dr. Martin Luther King says, we need leaders not interested in the love of money, but in the love of justice, not interested in publicity, but in love for humanity. And that is Mayor Perry for the people of Minneapolis. First, second, or third choice would be greatly appreciated. Much love, everybody.
Candidate Najad.
Thank you. My name is Sheila Najad, and I am running for mayor of Minneapolis for the people of Minneapolis. Time and again, politicians have made promises to us about change and justice, and yet we still see the same problems every year. We've been reforming, and things aren't getting better. We need bigger solutions. When everyone's saying the same thing, who can you trust? You can trust the people who have shown up. I helped create the Office of Violence Prevention. I helped create mobile mental health response teams that are hitting the streets this month. I'm a street medic, and I provided aid to those who were hurt by the Minneapolis Police Department when grieving the murder of George Floyd. I'm running to be your first choice, ranked choice mayoral candidate because I'm ready to work with you to fight for the people, to fight for the Minneapolis we deserve.
Candidate Benjigurtis.
Thank you. My name is Troy Benjigurtis. My website is mayortroy.com. And I have three things. Just like there are three choices, you get to rank your choices, but these are not ranked. I want a mayoral council. I want to have all 12 people that registered to run for mayor of Minneapolis to be able to spend full time working on this with me. And I can fund all of your salaries so that we can all have and we can all afford to live downtown if we wanted to, with a Minneapolis, by issuing a Minneapolis digital currency that has a basic income component. And then we can expand it so that every resident of Minneapolis has a basic income. And then finally, I want us to think about how do we get the city to 100% renewables, and do it by working with the farmers and the people in the rural areas and bridge the rural-urban divide.
Candidate Winter.
Hi, I'm Mike Winter, and I want to be your next mayor. I am the only bipartisan candidate here. I am not DFL, and I'm not Republican. I'm with the Independence Party of Minnesota, the same party that put Jesse governor in the governor's mansion. So let's do it again. I'm tired of Minneapolis being a punchline for the entire world. Minneapolis is not safe. Minneapolis has no housing. Minneapolis is a terrible city. Minneapolis needs a cheerleader. Minneapolis needs somebody that loves it, and that's the job for me. I'm running a grassroots campaign. I have no large donors. I would like to be your 1, 2, or 3 choice on the ballot. Remember, you can vote for 3. I just want the city to heal and to move forward together. Let's rebuild our police department. Let's make the streets safe again. That's my #1 priority. And thank you for watching tonight.
Candidate Awad.
Thank you for hosting this debate, League of Women Voters, a lead, a fair vote. It was really a pleasure. And to the voters, this is really an opportunity to decide on what path we're going to go forward. I personally have raised my hand because what I'm afraid is going to happen is that people are going to get comfortable and forgot that there is a racial reckoning in our hands. And that people are going to forget that there is systematic racism still present in our system. And for some reason, that this path that we're on of just vilifying either the very people that are really supposed to protect us, but also giving lip service to changes year after year after year after year after decades. And if Minneapolis is truly ready to take a new path forward, please look at my website. My vision is bold and it's a pretty powerful set of policies that I'm proposing. And I would say that your vote would probably be best served with AJ as your #1 rank and anyone else as number 2 or 3. Thank you very much.
Candidate Globus.
It is true that our mayor has been dealt some bad cards, but the truth is he has played them even worse. If I was confident in our mayor's abilities, I would not be sitting at this table. I have better places to spend my time. I don't need the job. What I need and what you need is a city that functions properly. You need a mayor that can get along with the city council. You need a mayor who isn't going to cut police funding from the budget. Frankly, I don't sound like a politician and I don't smell like a politician. What I am instead is a business builder. I can span the divides to bring all the parties to the table. I ask that you cast your first vote for me, and if not, your second vote. Our city needs to heal. Instead of voting from a place of fear, vote from a place of logic. I have the background and reputation and track record to reframe the dialogue with a fresh start. Thank you.
Candidate Fry.
Well, Minneapolis, if you've seen anything tonight, one aspect is that you've seen me get hit from every single angle, the left and the right. And if you've been watching, you have mayors around the country that are deciding not to run again. They're deciding not to run again because some of the most difficult issues of society, those that the federal and state governments often don't want to deal with, get passed down to cities. The mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Seattle, Jenny Durkin. These are mayors that have done everything possible to make their city a better place. And yes, we collectively have been dealt an unprecedented hand. And in addition to being unprecedented, what I've realized is that our city is also remarkable. Our city is remarkable in the way that we've rallied around a common cause, that we've locked arms to face the world and some of the most difficult experiences that our city has ever faced. This city does not quit, and neither do I.
Candidate Johnson.
I am Paul Johnson, and I am the one man here from the people and for the people. Remember, it is us, the people, who got Derek Chauvin arrested. It was us, the people, who got the charges up. It was us, the people, who made the changes necessary. The mayor is a leader. He has a bully pulpit, and the one thing he can control is the police in this city. No one on this panel has dealt with the police in the manners that I have, losing a friend, a cousin, and fighting with all the other families across the state and the country of stolen lives. This sort of value that I have can't be bought, and it should never be bought by your loved ones. I ask that you vote me #1 or Mr. Perry #2. Or if you vote Mr. Perry #1, you vote me Mr. #2. We are the candidates that will get it done for you today, tomorrow, and in the future.
Thank you, candidates, for your willingness to speak tonight and to run for public office. Thanks to our co-sponsors, Fair Vote Minnesota, MCN 6, A New 612, and Lead Minnesota. And thanks to our audience for tuning in and becoming educated voters. Because there is never enough time to cover all of the issues, if you feel that your question was not addressed, please contact candidates directly. The League of Women Voters researches issues important to our members and to the health of our communities. If you are interested in finding out more about what we do and how you can also make a difference, please go to the website lwvmpls.org. There you can view content like our recent public safety study and the 2021 voter guide, along with a questionnaire filled out by candidates. And lastly, remember to make a plan to vote on Tuesday, November 2nd. Early voting begins September 17th. For information on where and when to vote, visit vote.minneapolismn.gov. And remember, rank your vote. Good night, everyone.